Started here. Welcome to the Friday Morning Money Call. My name is Gary Bailey. I'm the founder of White Box Properties and HomeFlip.ai, which is an AI-powered probate platform that we developed to help real estate investors like yourself. I'm a full-time real estate investor. I'm a wholesaler. Do some flips here in Cincinnati, but I'm actively in the game just like you. And what I want to talk about today is the difference between a professional real estate investor versus just a hobbyist. And again, I talk to a lot of investors all across the country every single day. And there's a very distinct difference between when I talk to somebody who is a professional real estate investor, you can tell this is what they do, versus a hobbyist. And I'm just going to go through a couple of the characteristics. And you can ask yourself, are you a hobbyist or are you a professional real estate investor? And the number one thing that I see with professional real estate investors versus somebody that kind of treats this like a hobby is that a professional investor creates a pipeline of properties that flow into their business, where a hobbyist sits and just waits for deals to come to them. And then they sit back and they'll run their little analysis, which I'll get into later. And then they're like, oh, that deal's not for me. And they just basically are they're taking their business and they're putting it in the hands of other people. And if their phone doesn't ring because the wholesalers that they buy their properties from or whatever those sources are don't have any sources, then they just don't know what to do. So a true professional builds a pipeline of properties. Now, how do you do that? Well, there's about 10 different sources of properties that you can use. They're all over the map. You guys have, I'm not going to tell you anything you haven't heard before, but number one, you've got to get control of your local MLS. So you've got to stay on top of your MLS using some type of a portal, whether that's Zillow or Redfin or anything like that, all these real estate sites. So you need to stay on top of your MLS. That should be your number one source. In addition to your number one source, you need to have two other sources of properties that are consistently bringing leads into your business. And if you want to do any type of volume, so if you want to get beyond, one deal every 6 months or 2 or 3 deals a year, and you want to get up to where you're doing at least one deal a month, then you need to be looking at a minimum of 4 houses per week. These should be qualified deals. So if every week you're looking at 4 houses, you should be able to get at least one of those properties. And if your goal is to do multiple deals per month, then that's the way that you're going to do that. But the only way that's going to happen is if you actually have systems of pipelines of bringing properties, systems, that generate leads that bring properties into your business, into your pipeline, so that you have enough houses to go and look at. So of the different sources, and there's like 10, right? So you've got pre-foreclosures, you've got MLS properties, probate properties, which is a great source. You've got online auctions. You've got wholesalers, you've got Facebook groups, driving for dollars, bandit signs, direct mail, paid ads. So you can run paid ads on Facebook or Google. You can buy paid ads from companies like XLeads and different things like that. But those are all your different sources. If you try to work all 10 sources, you're going to get yourself in trouble. It's going to end up being too diluted, and you're not going to be able to know, where are my deals coming from? How can I follow up with all these deals? So I would encourage you to set up 3 different sources in your pipeline that are your main sources. So I think that should be MLS should be number 1. And then depending on what your budget is, you could potentially do like a direct mail campaign, and you could do driving for dollars to be another one, maybe wholesalers, Facebook groups. But whatever works for you, you need to have 3 different sources of properties that are coming in. The second underlying principle, okay, for what separates somebody from a hobbyist from a real estate professional is that hobbyists rely on push-button tools, and professionals understand the underlying foundational principles behind those tools and how they work. Let me give you an example. Let me show you a house that we got under contract last week that we're going to be putting out tomorrow. It's in Milford, if you're familiar with Cincinnati. So this is the property right here. It is on a street called Bernova in Day Heights, and it's in Milford. Let's look at the pictures first. So here they are. I've already gone through the property. It needs new windows. It needs a roof. The roof is okay, but it's got a garage. It's got a worn down kitchen, a little bit of foundation issue. So this is exactly the type of property that you want to have if you're looking at deals. We got our foundation guy out there. He said $8,000 for that, for warranty foundation repair. There was already a sump pump put in. In this area, it's real common that you'll have those foundation issues there. not a problem, nothing that doesn't scare us at all. So again, this is the type of house that we want. This is exactly the type of deal that we want. It needs just amount of work, just the right amount of work that they can't sell it, traditional buyer, so it falls onto somebody like us. So here's the information on the property. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to determine what is this property worth, and you can use the fancy tools and all that stuff. But again, I'm not going to put my business in the hands of some push button, little tool that's going to tell me, what they think that the property is worth, and I'm just not going to accept that blindly. If you look at Zillow as a good example, they tried to do that on their own and they ended up going out of business. And I would argue they had access to some of the best information out there, and they still tried to make a business model around that, and it didn't work, and they went out of business. So that to me is enough information to tell me that the push button tools don't always work. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We've got this property here it's on Bernova, 1134 Bernova, Milford, Ohio. They say it's a 2-bed. It's not a 2-bed. It also says that it doesn't have a basement, which it does have a basement. And here's the square footage, about 1,400 square feet. 2-bed, 1-bath. Let's dig in and really quickly and just kind of get an idea of what this property potentially could be worth. And the way that we're going to do it is we're going to use publicly available data that's on Redfin. So we're going to click right here, and we are going to bring up the map. We're going to click on nearby homes for sale, and we're going to change this to sold, and we're going to go back to 1 year. Done. And we're going to stay kind of in this pocket. So this is our house right here. It's on Bernova. We've got a kind of a main street here, but if you drive the area, you'll notice that these are kind of all the same over here. These are kind of all the same over here. And we're going to look at, what are some of these houses selling for? What are they similar? What are the similar properties selling for? So again, we're going to compare ranches to, this is a ranch, so we're going to compare ranches to ranches. We're never going to compare a bi-level to a ranch or a 2-story to a ranch. So this is a one-story ranch property with a basement. Some of these don't have basements. And I'm going to sort these things high to low. That way I've got an idea of, okay, what are the top values in the area? Well, obviously that's not a comp. That's not a comp. All right, so here's our top one. So now we're getting into our ranches. So you got this one on Willowwood, 1139 Willowwood. You can see as I highlight it that it highlights right here. See, we're here on the corner. This is Willowwood, 340. So we're going to look at this. We're going to say, okay, what's the condition of this property? They've got a basement. We've got a basement. It's unfinished. Ours is unfinished. They've got a nice fireplace down there. Little pool table action. Cool. So very, very similar property to ours. So they do have that nice 2-car pole barn, which is something really important to pay attention to, because that's very nice. You can't put one of those up for free. So we got that. That's $340,000 right there for that property. Then our next one is 333 on Rainbow Trail. Not bad. Typical little ranch, millennial gray, rehabbed house. 333. 3-bed, 1-bath. So we're at 333 versus 340. And then you've got this other one here, 315. Let's see what this one is. That's a condo. So that is different. Traverse Creek, Unit 1D. That is a condo that butts up to that area. So just, preliminary numbers here, we're looking at about 333,000, 340,000. Now, did this one get 340 because it had that garage? I don't know. It's hard to tell because this one got 333 with no detached garage at all. And then you've got this right here for 315. And it is updated but not rehabbed is how we say that. It's kind of nice. It's got that extra shower. There's actually, maybe it is a rehab. Does look good. But again, we're looking for, it does have a garage. It's got that detached garage there. Again, that's a factor. All right. So with all that said, we're going to put ours. There's no definite value, but we're going to put ours based on all of that. I'm going to say that this property is worth about $330,000 is what we think that it's worth based on that. Now, if I just simply rely on, the tools and the automated estimates, I don't know if that's going to be accurate or not, but I know in my heart of hearts that I've done my numbers. I've looked at the values. I can argue for the value of that property. If I was going to list it on the MLS after I fixed it up, I would feel totally comfortable putting it on the MLS at $339,000, $339,900, and just see what I can get with the goal of getting about $330,000. Now, the other thing, the other push button tools that I see out there advertised more and more and more is rehab estimates. I see where people they click on a property and it pulls it in, and this is what it's worth. This is the rehab estimate. How in the world does that possibly work? And the bottom line is that it doesn't. So if you're a hobbyist, you're just a real estate hobbyist, then you want to rely on these click button tools like that. And what it's going to do is, because you don't understand the underlying fundamentals of how they got to those numbers or what those numbers mean, that you'll never end up getting in the game, because you'll just say, okay, I clicked this button on this thing and my computer told me that I can't buy this property because of this. Well, why? Is it the rehab estimate? Is it the value? Is it the strategy? What's your buy? What is the appreciating area? What is it? And those tools are really, really great. They're to help things sound easy, but it doesn't always mean that they're going to be that effective. Now, you can use them. I'm not downplaying any of those tools. I'm just saying you don't want to outsource your brain to some push button app that was developed by some engineer. You want to make sure that you understand the underlying principles. So on this property, for examining a deal, I've got the rehab estimate as well. I've got deal analysis too, and that's important as well. You got to understand, how does the ARV factor into the rehab estimate, which determines what you should pay for the property. Because what should you pay for the property? If you're going to flip it, it's going to be different than whether you're going to rent it, right? If you're going to do Airbnb or whatever it is, or if you're going to live there, there's a different price point for each one of those things. Just like there's a different price point for each of the rehab estimates for the property. So it's impossible to just upload pictures, click a button and say, okay, kitchens are this, bathrooms are this, because it all is going to vary depending on your area, depending on the scope of work that you're going to have, and definitely who's going to be doing the work. Are you going to be doing it yourself, or are you going to be hiring out as a contractor? So again, hobbyists look for push button solutions versus thinking critically and understand that hobbyists don't understand the underlying principles. So if you want to be a real estate professional, you've got to understand the underlying principles. How do you determine after repair value? How do you determine rehab estimate, right? How much work that it needs? How do you determine the correct scope of work? And then how do you determine your buy price? So I call it my preliminary buy price and my final buy price. The third thing, this kind of goes along with the second one. The third sign of a real estate hobbyist versus a real estate professional is that real estate hobbyists take everything just at face value. And where real estate professionals think critically. And the way that you think critically is you ask multi-levels deep. So you think 5, 6 levels deep. You might ask why 5 times to get further down and further down. So for example, if we took this property and say, okay, the property is worth $330,000 and the buy price is $185. Why? Well, why is it worth $330,000? Well, we looked at the comps. We looked at the comps because we said it could be worth $340, but the ones that are $340 have those garages. It looks like there's about a $10,000 difference. Then on the non-rehabbed houses drop down to about $300, $315. So I can say why. Why is it worth $330,000? This is why. I can explain specifically why I think it's worth that. What's my rehab estimate? Well, let's look at my rehab estimate here. My rehab estimate on this house, in this case, I've got about $60,000 in work. So I've got $5,000 for the roof, got $8,000 for the driveway, $6,000 for windows and doors, $6,500 for the kitchen, $2,500 for appliances, bath and plumbing. I've got $1,500 to put in a new hot water heater, $4,000 for a full bath renovation. You could also put in a little bit of plumbing, patching, and stuff in there as well. $1,500 for the electrical, which is basically new electrical outlets, where it's needed, new light fixtures, things like that. Central AC and heating, it's fine. You might want to add, $750 on there for service. Paint and drywall, got $4,500 for that. Carpeted flooring, another $4,500. $750 for landscaping. Foundation work in the basement, he said $8,000. I put $10,000 in there just to be safe. And then you've got another $5,000 because I think you want to finish that garage area, convert that into the full 3rd bedroom. So you've got 3 full bedrooms, and then you've got there's a carport out there as well. So you got about $60,000 total in work. Well, how does that factor into a flip? Well, I can tell you right now, if you were to put this into a push button tool, it's going to tell you it's probably not a good buy and hold if you're going to spend $60,000 on the rehab. So this rehab is for a flip, right? So we're asking again, what's our ideal buy price? Well, if you look here at the buy price flip, this is my little deal calculator here. It's just basically a Google sheet where it's going to break down specifically, if I paid this much money for it, how much would I make? So if I've got $75,000 in rehabs, let's do 60,000. What did I say the rehab estimate was? 60,500. 60,500. Okay. Okay. So buy the truck. Let's say I buy it at 185. I put 60 into it, and my projected profit would be 60 grand. If I sell it at 335, let's bump that down. 330. Let's say just sell for 330. Okay, 330 there, real estate commission. I'm going to pay 6%. Again, this is getting down to the underlying numbers. I'm understanding how, why are these numbers what they are. So I'm going to buy the property. Let's say I'm going to sell it at 330. I'm going to back up my real estate commission, which is about $19,000. Now, if I'm a listing agent myself, I can save a lot of that. I'm going to pay about 1% on closing costs. Let's say I pay about $3,300 on top of that. So I'm going to pay about $3,300 in closing costs for the buyers. So again, it's a rough estimate. It's not exact. It's not an exact science by any means. And then I've got closing costs when I buy it. So I'm going to have about 1% closing costs when I buy that property. Now, if you have financing, obviously it's going to affect these numbers. And then I go in and I look at, okay, what are my soft carrying costs? Well, my utilities will be about $100 a month. My property taxes, I've looked up, are $135 a month. Insurance, about $100 a month that you're going to get for a vacant building policy. I'm not going to put any interest payments on here because in this case, I wouldn't have a loan. But if you had a loan, you put your interest payment on there. And then you put your project length. So how long do you think it's going to take? Anywhere from 6 months to 8 months. Let's say it's even 8 months. And that's going to affect our soft costs. If you have like a miscellaneous expense, that might be like, origination fee or like closing costs, whatever that is. That's where you would put that. So you could say overall, this deal is going to cost me about $335 per month to carry it throughout the project, right? So my total carrying cost would be about $2,600. And my gross margin before repairs is $302,000. And subtract that my rehab estimate, 60,500, and bada boom, bada bing. That gives me a projected profit of about $55,000. Now, if I'm an investor and I could buy a property for 185, I could sell it for 330, and I can make $55,000 over 8 months. I would be pretty happy with that as an investor who's looking to flip this house. So again, you could overspend on the rehab, you could sell it for less, you could spend less. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, which is why it's important that you understand the underlying principles of what goes into these tools, and then you're thinking critically. You're thinking, okay, why is it worth that? Why is the rehab 60,000? We broke it all down. Now, again, my $60,000 rehab might look different than your $60,000 rehab. You might decide to finish the basement, which is going to cost you an extra, $10,000, $15,000, and you might get an extra $10,000. Maybe you get to that $340,000. But we know that the most expensive property that's sold in that neighborhood in the last year is $340,000. There was a couple of those in between $330,000 and $340,000, and that's kind of where you want to stay as far as your value. So you don't want to go, crazy and over rehab the property and try to over improve it for the area. Because once you start getting over the $340,000 that we showed, that's when you start getting into buyers that are like, well, I could buy a 2-story house for that, or I could buy, a 4-bed or a little bigger property. Once you start getting above that $350,000 price point. All right, so that's it. And then the final thing is that the final point that separates a hobbyist from a real estate professional is real estate hobbyists wait for something to happen, and real estate professionals make something happen. They make something happen. They bring those deals into their business. So they're either actively marketing for deals or looking for deals every day. They're actively putting offers in on properties. They're making things happen. They're not waiting for something else to happen. So you control your own destiny in this case, right? You don't want to outsource your future of what you want to accomplish in real estate, the financial independence of you and your family, and creating generational wealth. You're not going to outsource that to some software program and just rely on it and just accept it as gospel. Like even my software program, it's really, really good. Our platform is very, very good, but we teach you the underlying fundamentals of how it all works and how to put these things together, how to estimate the rehab, how to determine the actual repair value. And that's so important because when you're actually out there in the game, doing deals, talking to contractors, you need to understand these underlying principles. And if you start interacting with other people who are actual professionals, whether that's a full-time real estate investor who is making things happen, or a full-time wholesaler or a real estate agent or a contractor, and you're just out there acting like a hobbyist and you're running against these professionals, you're not going to stand a chance. If you're a hobbyist up against a professional real estate investor and you're trying to buy the property, The professional real estate investor is going to beat you out on that property because they're going to know, oh, there's somebody else out here. This is a highly competitive situation. I need to tighten my numbers up a little bit. Where a hobbyist acts like they're the only one in the entire world that are looking at this property. They've got all the time in the world. They can take days to act, weeks to act. I see it every day, guys. The investors that are making this happen, buying houses, they go and look at the property. They've got their financing already lined up in advance. They put their offer on their property and they sign the contract. Everybody else is like, whoa, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I got to talk to Joe, and then he's got to talk to his brother, and maybe we're going to think about doing it. And then they just talk about doing it and they never actually get in the game. It's not because they don't want to. It's not a personal judgment on them. It's just that they don't have all their ducks in a row. They're just waiting for things to come to them. Oh, well, give me a call if you get another one, and then I'll spend 5 days running my numbers on that. Guys, it's very clear. Hobbyist, professional. It's the line is very, very clear. And when you talk to somebody who's professional, you know what they're talking about. You know that they have a pipeline of business. You understand that they do recognize and understand the underlying principles of what goes into a buy price, what goes into a rehab. They're not just clicking buttons, right? A professional real estate investor, they think critically. They think several levels deep. They're always asking why. Why is that? You said $60,000 in rehab. Why? What are you doing for that work? Are you finishing the garage? Are you not finishing the garage? They have the ability to think about different possibilities and come up with the best pathway that's going to fit their particular strategy to get to their outcome. They're not just going to say, okay, 70% rule. Okay, it doesn't fit the 70% rule. Done, not doing it. Well, that 70% rule might not apply to all areas. So if you're in a competitive area with a higher market price, those percentages start getting really, really wonky. And if you just say, all right, ARVs times 70%, oh, it's too much, not going to do the deal. But if you know how to break down the numbers into what makes that, what goes into those costs, what goes into the profit margin, what goes into your carrying costs, then you can make an informed decision by working your numbers from the bottom up instead of just saying after per value times 0.7, oh, it's too much, deal's not going to work for me. Well, why? Why not? Why not? And then the final thing about that separates a real estate professional from a real estate hobbyist is they make things happen. They don't sit back and just wait for things to come to them. So if this is you, and you're the type of person that wants to take action, adhere to these things, build a pipeline, understand your underlying principles, think critically, and make things happen versus waiting for things to happen for you. And you will see a massive shift in your business just by changing your mindset and thinking like, what can I do every day to act as a real estate professional versus just a real estate hobbyist? All right, guys, hope you guys got a lot of information out of this today. If you want to join my school community, it is school.com/property magnet. You can get in there, network with me, go through all my training videos. If you're interested in probate leads, we've got probate leads for sale. There'll be a link underneath this where you can do that as well. All right, guys, have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you back here next week. If you're interested in probate leads in your county, our counties are filling up quickly. I've got 3 calls today. Get in there, go to homeflip.ai, click the Claim Your County button, and let's talk. Have a great day, guys. Talk to you soon.